Hello and welcome to another video that's probably a financial mistake. Today we're going to be speaking about the custom X macro that I recently put together. Some of you guys saw the video that I made on the X macro, the kind of the short form video talking about why I really enjoyed it. However, there were some small things that I would have preferred to be able to be changed. And since X macros or the SIG P365 family as a whole has pretty much become a very expensive Lego set for men, it's been a very interesting experience to try out different products that are available on the market. And I really would like to highlight some of those really interesting things that I had the pleasure of being able to test out. So stick around and let's check it out. So I'm going to try to work from the bottom all the way through the top of the gun and try to highlight the main things that I thought were interesting and unique about being able to change out for the X macro. So let's talk about the frame first. So the trigger unit of the firearms are obviously going to be the same. They're the same like heart serialized parts of the firearm, but everything else is able to be customized. So this is the original X macro frame that comes with the firearm. And honestly, I think it's great. It fits really nicely. It has a good texturing from the factory. My pinky, even though my hand size is a bit large, fits still just above the bottom, which is oftentimes going to be something I'm going to change simply because since my hand is a little bit larger, I often put a mag well or something that will allow my hand to really get a good grip on the gun. But this came with it and I think it was fine. They also came with the rail portion, obviously, to be able to attach flashlights of your choosing. And also, again, the slide itself was kind of neutral. So now here's where things started to change up. The first thing was for me, even though that this came with the good grip texturing as well as also a pretty decent size area for my pinky, I do like having a mag well. It helps with reloads as well as also even with my finger matching up there, it's kind of like a shelf where it allows me to have my finger rest on. So the frame that I went with, which was really kindly sent out to me by Icarus Precision, is one of their new frames. Now they said I could choose any frame that I wanted to be able to test out, but the reason why this was very interesting to me is that this is really affordable in comparison to other options that Icarus Precision offers, but it also comes with a built-in magwell. What's really interesting also is that this is a fully polymer option. They do have some kind of aluminum, I believe. I think there are aluminum options available that are all machined, very nicely done, but this is really lightweight. It's really affordable. If something happens to it, it's not scary for me to need to replace. It comes with great, more aggressive grip texturing, which I really feel a nice contact on the gun. It has a double undercut on the bottom of the trigger guard, which allows both hands to really get a good purchase on the gun, and I have my finger feel the bottom for an indication point. It works really nicely. It also has a gas pedal. So right over there, there's this piece right over here where your left or your support hand thumb is able to rest on. They do have options for right and left-handed shooters. So for me, being a right-handed shooter, that means my left thumb is going to be resting on that gas pedal, and it helps kind of with mitigating the recoil of the firearm, and it works really, really nicely. I have no complaints. Now, moving along with that, there is the magazine release. So the OEM magazine release, I ended up actually breaking after trying to replace on the original frame of the X macro. And what I ended up going with temporarily is this little button over here is from Strike Industries. They make a magazine release replacement for the X macro, and it works fine. However, I got contacted by Mascus Precision Industries, and they sent out two things that were really, really interesting to me. The first thing they sent out was that their own machined magazine release. Now, it may be very hard to tell because they really match the original design of the OEM magazine release, but there's a slight curve to this magazine release that makes it much easier to press when you're trying to do a magazine release, and it works phenomenally. So if I do a slight press, it just gives you a little bit of an adjustment where you're able to press it. Now, for most guns that I'm going to use, that little press of a button, you have to kind of break your grip, so to speak, to be able to actually engage the magazine release. With this button, it really makes it that I barely need to move my finger, but it's not not in a way that I'm going to have to kind of have a extended magazine release where you might accidentally drop it if you accidentally press it. So it's not protruding in a way that it's going so far out that you might unintentionally depress the button, but it is just slightly in a curve that when you're going to release it the way it's originally designed anyway, it gives you a little bit more space to be able to press it. And I think it's a very simply, beautifully designed machined piece. It's all metal, so it's gonna last you and it works great. The magazines on the X Macro are metal as well. So unlike some other firearms where if you have a polymer magazine and a metal magazine release, it could damage over time. Since they are both metal, you will not have that issue in this case. Next is going to be the M Carbo trigger. Now, I got very confused because there are people who make the actual trigger itself, and then there's people who make recess points on the front and back to make the reset of the actual trigger a little bit different. This flat face trigger I think works really nicely. I didn't like how far forward the X Macro trigger was originally, and I think it was just a little bit annoying to kind of have to deal with that. This is a flat face trigger, which SIG also offers, but it's also pulled back just a little bit, and the trigger press on this is really, really nice. So there's the initial take up, the wall, and then the break. Breaks really nicely, and then I can try to see if I'm able to get the reset on camera here for you. So coming up close. So it does work really nicely to me. It has a good springy action, which I really do like, and has worked, again, for me personally very well. Now, here's where some of the issues I've had with the X Macro really start to matter. The magazines on the X Macro, from what I've seen, a lot of SIGs in general, a lot of people have been reporting that their magazine rust. I've experienced it absolutely, where there are different parts of the magazine that start to rust, and for the price you're spending on the magazines, you'd hope that they'd be a little bit more reliable, or there's some kind of coating they might be able to apply to them to be able to resolve that. Now, I haven't found a resolution to the magazines other than being able to Cerakote them, which I might consider doing, considering the longevity that I would like to get out of these magazines. But what's worried me is I've also had that issue with the slide, where on the rear portion of the slide, where right now there isn't anything, but right over there, I would start seeing some wears of just surface rust on the slide itself, which doesn't make me feel comfortable. So the slide itself was something in the future I thought about being able to change out, because I obviously don't want to run into that issue. The number one thing that could destroy a gun is rust if you don't take care of it. Now, what I ended up doing with this slide is that this is the shorter slide for the standard P365, and this is the X Macro, so it doesn't actually fit together. However, if you do what I did, which is you get the Parker mounted machine barrel and comp combination, then what it ends up doing is that it fills up the rest of that front gap, and it fits perfectly flush to the front of the Icarus precision frame, and that ends up being a total gun, as opposed to getting the standard size length slide and then adding a comp on top of that, which means you're gonna have kind of a much larger length gun. So I like the fact that it's able to be flush fit. It fits perfectly well to the edge of the slide, and I think it works really nicely. And after I've started using Parker mounted machine barrel and comps, it's really hard to go back, because if you notice, if you trained a lot and then you add something that kind of gives you like a extra feature and really helps with recoil reduction, it is really, really nice to be able to shoot. I think they work great. The install of it is not crazy difficult, and they do work phenomenally well when it comes to recoil mitigation. So that's something I enjoyed as well. The sights that I'm using right now are still the stock sights that came with the gun. However, since I added an optic, I got this optic from Optics Force. They work fantastic. The EPS carries have really become a very important staple for my concealed carry guns. Enclosed emitter, so nothing could get into it like dust and debris or water. I really do enjoy them. I will have to replace the sights on this firearm, because since I'm using an optic, it doesn't match up perfectly well to be able to see through that. So that's something that will be ultimately replaced. I really do enjoy the sights from XS Sights, so I'm probably going to replace it with one of their offerings. They do also have bright front sights and rear sights. I'm not sure if they have a blacked out front and rear, but I'd love to check that out to see if that's something that they have. And that's kind of just the basic overview of this firearm so far. Now, going along with that, if you live in a state where you're not able to have a comp, or in some cases I kind of want a slick design, or if I want to give you an example of a company that's making amazing slides for the X Macro and for SIG in general. So this is the slide from Mascus Precision Industries. They have like a neural design on the front and rear of the firearm. The install is just as simple, which I'm not going to show on camera because it's super illegal apparently based on the YouTube guidelines, but a simple swap of these current slide that you have, and then you're able to just replace it with the Mascus Precision Industry slide. So you can see how that comes together super, super nicely. They have a very, very well-designed slide that has, again, great knurling. The coating on it seems to be able to last a lot longer without rusting, which is obviously very important. It does have a little bit more weight weight to it, and it looks just really good. That a little bit of additional weight really feels like it helps with the recoil reduction. It will not be the same as using a compensator. Those are significantly better. So what I'm hoping for is that they're a small company. They're really putting out really nicely machined parts, but being a small company, it's going to take a longer time for them to develop and to be able to have the quantities to be able to really produce other options. So I really do like what they're doing. It happens to be also that their designs perfectly fit the design of the Icarus precision frame, which just makes it look a whole lot nicer. And what I'm hoping for is if they have the smaller slide that would be end up being available, I would definitely make this my concealed carry setup with a Parker mounted machine comp on the front, and that kind of package with a better coating on the slide, so it makes me less concerned about rusting over time. Their barrels and their slides are beautifully machined. They look really, really nice. They have great markings that are very minimalistic, so it doesn't make it overly dramatic when you're using it, and I really think it's a great option to be able to look into. So if you're looking to build out an X macro, it's very simple to do, and for slightly more than the cost of a standard X macro, you could really add the parts that you feel are more important to you, whether that be the trigger, whether that be an enhanced trigger, whether that be a different slide entirely. If you want to add a barrel and comps, you can just buy parts separately. You're able to build it out for a reasonable price considering, except it'll end up being fully custom to the design that you want. So if you're looking for any of these parts, I'm going to try to leave as many links in the description as I can. So the frame from Icarus Precision, M-Carbo trigger, the slide from Mascus Precision Industries, which you could also get a barrel and comp, barrel and slide combination, the Optic from opticsforce.com, as well as also the compensator from a Parker mounted machine, which I think works really, really well. These are all, I think, really well-made parts, really well-machined parts, and it was a very nice experience to be able to run these in different sets of occasions. If you have any questions on the parts that I'm listing or on the functionality or usage of these firearms, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This is Raziel Cohen with the tacticalrabbi.com. Thank you for watching.